going to take just a minute this morning to touch on a couple of issues around irregularities in government contracting spaces. Someone tagged me on this post yesterday, and it actually is significant, so thank you. And I want to do a little discussion of it and then do a bit of a read aloud about Unicomp and the world computer from Ira Levin. So this case is in Harris County, Texas, which is the Houston metro area, and it's a former public health official who is being investigated for offering insider information to advantage IBM in an RFP process called for proposals for offering data infrastructure for wraparound services for public health for vulnerable populations, which is everything I've been talking about with Pay for Success finance and evidence-based medicine and healthcare blockchain digital twins. And of course, all of this will be on RFK Jr.'s lap, right? This is the stuff that he is going to be tasked with coordinating. And so, and clearly he's all in on Texas. He's there all the time. So we need to understand this. And the woman, Barbie Robinson, so she's being investigated for essentially irregularities in government contracting services.
Harris County District Attorney Kim Ogg is expected to present formal charges against former Harris County Public Health Director Barbie Robinson.
She's now charged with misuse of official information.
According to court documents, this all stems from the misuse of millions of dollars by the Public Health Department. Now, according to court documents, investigators collected emails between IBM and Harris County employees, including Robinson, discussing a $16 million contract for Access Harris. That's a service provided by Harris County Public Health to assist those with critical needs. And according to these records, the DA's office is alleging IBM was aware of the project before bidding began and had already started working on it.
And there was a similar case that happened last month, which was sort of close to my heart because it was part of my early journey in researching educational technology and impact finance, which was this woman, let me see, Mary Ann Dewan.
Santa Clara County Office of Education Superintendent Mary Ann Dewan was terminated during a late-night board meeting.
The action comes after multiple reports by our investigative reporter Candace Wynn, who joins us now with the story. Board members are not saying why, but a source close to the board tells me this firing was the result of many issues, including what we first reported over the summer. Concerns that the Santa Clara County Office of Education misused some federal funds, as well as complaints of retaliation by staff. On Thursday, parent Yadira Orozco says she's happy about Dewan's firing. She was behind one of the complaints that sparked a federal review of Santa Clara County Office of Education's Head Start program and concerns of misuse of some funds. Head Start is a federal program that helps low-income children with early development. In July, our investigative unit broke the story and was there as 6 federal monitors visited the San Jose Ritter Park office. No word yet on any findings from the federal Head Start review. Mary Ann Dewan is on paid administrative leave for 30 days. Her termination date is November 2nd.
In Santa Clara County, California, who was essentially, there were irregularities with the finance procedures with the Head Start funding. And again, Head Start links to child divination, in my opinion. And Mary Ann Dewan, the Santa Clara County Office of Education was through Marcy Lauk integrated with this National Laboratory for Educational Transformation, which had been doing work for a long time in data simulation modeling, blockchain identity systems, data-driven education, giant data lakes that would be feeding this thing called Data Zone that was piloted in San Jose schools and then later expanded to the region. It was funded initially through the NSF, National Science Foundation, and then later through Mark Zuckerberg and Priscilla Chan, the Chan-Zuckerberg program, and became morphed into this national interoperability collaborative where the education data becomes merged with health and human service data, not only, in my opinion, for impact finance, but for managing this, what I'm calling the psychic ant computer in my thought experiment. So Mary Ann Dewan, who was a superintendent, a longtime superintendent of the county, was sort of called on the floor for accounting irregularities with respect to Head Start finance. And so I think both of these are really important. There was a whole big prominent press conference about it. And, you know, this happened, I guess, on the 19th, so within the past week. And I know that Houston is clearly very high profile. It's important to understand that it was a focus of big data government policy implementation through the Harvard Kennedy School of Policy, and a lot of that infrastructure was funded by John Arnold, who is also based in Houston. So these are very significant connections to Houston. Not only that, plus my feeling about Houston being sort of the inner space area. This is a site visit that Jason and I did on that same trip in 2021, and it's to the Arnold Venture, the site, the campus on the outside of the Arnold Ventures in Houston. So I'm going to include this one as well.
So going back to John Arnold, John and Laura Arnold live here in Houston. Laura is a former oil executive and lawyer. John started his career with Enron in energy futures trading. And in the early 1990s, the company was one of the first to really take advantage of the internet for their trading systems. And they were trading in derivatives in energy. And John was called sort of the king of natural gas. And then eventually Enron imploded, not before he took out quite a nice bonus package before the company all fell apart. And he moved on and created his own hedge fund to trade in futures markets. And the name of his company was called Centaurus, which is interesting because we've talked previously about centaurs being sort of the human-machine hybrid and the nicer name they're interested in using other than cyborg, that the DARPA and Amy Cruz is interested in looking at human-machine interfaces as centaurs. So that was the name of his energy trading company. And again, once we understand, I think, the history of big oil in energy futures, that the new energy futures is going to be in the energy produced by beings, not just human beings, but other living beings on the planet that become colonized by nanoelectronics and harvested for data and energetic systems. Within the broader context of both educational technology and public health and COVID, at this point, as we're talking about energy futures and big oil in Houston, which, you know, that is the Houston context, is big oil and the transition now to alternative energy. It's really vital that we understand the role of the Rockefeller Foundation, going back early to Rockefeller's father, who was a snake oil salesman, right? And then the advancement of Standard Oil in geopolitics and reshaping policies to serve its financial interests, including public health. So as we can see all the way through line, the Rockefeller Foundation has been central in developing the human capital markets, in financializing nature, and controlling the biosurveillance state that is now rolling out under the COVID lockdown. So the oil futures markets and big oil's hands in all aspects of our lives are really central in understanding the role of John and Laura Arnold and Arnold Ventures. The oil and natural gas industry is very central around pipelines. And in the human capital space and in the education space, education and health outcome space, we're looking at pipelines as well, pipelines of human capital. In the management of children, that is called cradle to career, or possibly even eventually cradle to cradle management, cybernetic management of human lives. That human capital investing space is being advanced nationally through an organization called Strive Together. Strive Together does cradle to career pathways, especially for vulnerable communities. They're looking at everything from home visits to early childhood education to early literacy to college attainment to reskilling. And each of those is a human capital impact opportunity. It is carried out in many communities through the United Way and the Chambers of Commerce, because all of education then becomes aligned to planned regional economies. And that goes under the name of collective impact. So you're seeing a lot of big collective venture capital firms going in on this, Blue Meridian among them, that are active in Texas and that are going to be picking up in this space pretty soon around math impact bonds, around early literacy bonds, around home visit bonds, around health outcomes bonds. These are all going to be woven in. There isn't a Strive Together here in Houston, but there is in Austin, and it's called the E3 Alliance. The cybernetic management of people through pathways, continuum of care pathways and educational pathways is definitely linked to this carbon credit trading system. And I spoke about this in an online presentation I did in early March of 2020, where I likened the idea of outcomes-based government contracts to the cap and trade system that was innovated in the oil and gas industry. In the space that is coming up around outcomes-based government contracting, pay for success, social impact bonds, and cybernetic management of individuals and populations, it is all about data analytics. How you track someone along the pipeline, how you track them along the continuum of care, how you track their compliance. And that is why KIP is such a foundational element of this, because it is a behaviorist and is being directly attached to behavioral economics, this behavioral economic system of digital nudges and guidance into people living out lives according to something else that is planned outside of them, to where they will fit in a post-human world and a post-big oil economy. So we have the sense of carbon trading, behavioral economics, human capital pipelines, and global finance, and then eventually the sensor and wearable technology sectors. And KIP is aligning all of these children into this pathway. Now, in the future, the plan is going to be actually, in my opinion, the goal will be to KIP the world, to use the knowledge's power, work hard, be nice under technological surveillance, not just to children in K-12, but for everyone in global charter cities. And charter cities are areas that are states of exception that are advanced by Paul Romer at NYU. And the idea is to carve out existing areas of cities of existing governments and put in place of that a corporate governance layer where people can be experimented on for data analytics and impact markets. So I think the plan is to KIP the world, and the finance and tech and big pharma and defense sectors are all in on this game. So it's important to know that John Arnold, I believe he signed up for the Giving Pledge, and that he is advancing something called Arnold Ventures. Arnold Ventures is pretty much into every social cause. Their focus is sort of, I guess, data-driven justice, that their intent is that they will solve all of the world's problems on data dashboards, on data analytics dashboards. And of course, that would be the mindset of someone who is a energy futures trader, someone who is trading on the internet with high frequency trading in derivatives, because we know the plan is to securitize all of these debt markets that will be meant to ostensibly help people, but not really help. It's never going to solve the problem. Some of the areas that they are focused on are early childhood, K-12 education, higher education, prison reform, climate justice, addiction treatment. But all of these programs are going to be linked into digital surveillance of targeted populations. And once caught in the web of these social impact interventions, people will never be able to escape, because if we create global markets in poverty management that are profitable, then the plan will be to grow poverty, to grow managed poverty, and that is what Arnold Ventures is about. Within this, they were working on supporting the Beek Center, B-E-C-K, at Georgetown. Georgetown is central to advancing data analytics and social policy interventions under the guise of social justice that are anything but. And so Arnold Ventures is a key supporter of the Beek Center, and Sonal Shah, who is working in a connection with the Obama administration, helped founded that. And then Arnold Ventures later was a supporter of the celebration around the passage of the Social Impact Partnerships Pay for Results Act, which is called CIPRA, which was seed money for all of these early pay for success finance programs. So again, that sort of knits together our human capital futures, energy, carbon credit management, for profit on data dashboards by those who are interested in trading in futures markets, derivatives markets, through these technologies. that is what knits together the KIPP charter franchise with Arnold Ventures, is the idea that we will transform injustices, achievement gaps, economic gaps, opportunity gaps, and then we will turn that into data on dashboards, and we will predictively profile all of those who need public services. We will privatize them for global investors. We will track everything on a dashboard for cybernetic purposes, for technocracy purposes, looking at energy inputs and outputs, all of it on blockchain, and it will serve to further enrich the global elite. Because if you have poverty that makes a profit, the market says, the market logic is that you will never eliminate the source of your profit. You will only grow managed poverty. And that is what brings together Arnold Ventures and the KIPP charter franchise, one of their investments.
So Houston is a test bed, again, charter schools. In this case, the contract that was inappropriate in that the health official who had come from California, which is a center of a lot of this impact finance, pay for success, integrated health. She had run a program called Access in Sonoma County. And then she came to Houston to implement a similar program, but then she was giving extra information to IBM to advantage them in the contracting, the bid process that enabled them winning this giant bid. I think it says 16, but somewhere else I saw $30 million. So a very significant contract. And then it's not only about the contract, but it's also about getting control of the infrastructure to run one of these big test beds, which I believe will be part of this evidence-based blockchain health system, integrated health system, which will be part of, you know, the Kennedy stuff. As I was thinking about it, that those access integrated data systems for social services reminded me a lot of this short video called Pathfinder that I had shared several years ago, talking about smart contracts, adding a layer of logic, sort of yes, no contracts onto the world, like gamifying the world. And just like Chip in the story with his bracelet, like in the scanning, these would be impact metrics and sort of meeting certain goals fed into data governance and what works government and pay for success solutions in government systems. And it's all about integrated healthcare and integrated data, again, creating these twins in the name of community health. And so I'm going to play this. It's just 3 minutes and point out a few things.
Meet Kathy. Kathy is a community care coordinator employed by a local nonprofit. Kathy.
So here is the community care coordinator, and that's a lot like the advisor in the story. It's interesting because they're drawing these, if you're listening, there's like a whiteboard. It's that sort of whiteboard with a Sharpie pen drawings, but the people don't have faces, which I think is very Unicomp-like. So it's meet Kathy, and there's sort of like these little hash marks under Kathy, like Kathy's not a real person. Kathy's a healthcare, public health chatbot.
Kathy's organization is part of the Better Health Together Pathfinder Community Hub, which makes her part of a regional network of community-based care coordinators committed to providing standardized, whole-person care. Standardized,
whole-person care. So the whole person also includes mental health. I think that's really important in terms of, again, the thought experiment that I'm putting out about the psychic and computer that involves both your physical health and your cognition and your psyche and your spirit. So the way this is being drawn out, she's a network. She's part of a network, which is a decentralized system of nodes, and they all have circles around them. So they are all nodes and agents in this sort of gamified health scenario.
To people at risk. The hub receives referral.
Now a hub, that's also the sort of the cycle, the circle. So the hub is where it's like the octopus, right? The octopus sets the goal-oriented behaviors, and then all the little advisors look at local conditions and their client base, and then they provide some sort of suitable complement of menu of options to supposedly care for their clients' needs. But really, it's about having the clients jump through a lot of hoops to create data.
For families and individuals needing support services, and pairs them with community-based coordinators like Kathy. Kathy has been helping Joe navigate and access services since he was released from jail.
It's interesting. So she says access services, and all of these programs are called access. But really, it seems like the system it's about accessing you. And neither of these people, Kathy or Joe, have faces.
Because Joe will be more likely to succeed if he knows his family is healthy and supported, Kathy will be working with his daughter Sarah and her mother Amy too.
And this is what always upset me the most, is that if you have someone in your life who is involved in a judicial system or some sort of policy program, it's never just that person. Now it's an integrated network. So then by them being part of getting assistance, the entire household becomes integrated into the system, which is even more data. This is just a giant data grab, really. And they're managing the child and the mother just as a consequence of Joe's behavior, which is ridiculous. But if you understand this as sort of this vast data lake construction, then it starts to make sense of what's actually happening.
Kathy begins by going to their house to start a comprehensive risk assessment that will identify what services Amy and Sarah might benefit from.
And a lot of these Pay for Success finance programs are structured as home visits. And for the most part, I think people might want to imagine a kinder, gentler time where you actually might have someone who really did care about you come to know you as a person. But these Pay for Success finance infrastructures tied to public health really just means that you're an asset. You're a data asset. You're a cog in this larger thing. And my feeling is, and no shade on people who go into social work because they really want to help, but they can't change the system that they're being integrated in. And as agents of the state and agents of this system that is attached to global finance, and some of those global financial institutions are healthcare and insurance companies because they're investing assets in Pay for Success as well, you're not really able to be a human being on those home visits. And in fact, really it's data gathering. So all of these people will be provided with iPads to gather as much data as possible when they're in the home. So if a lot of questions, you'll see a lot of discussion about home visit policy, both for maternal healthcare disparities and preschool evaluation and trauma evaluation. But I would just be mindful, like I wouldn't want a home visit where there's someone coming in and collecting a bunch of data on you.
For each risk, Kathy assigns a pathway, a standard, evidence-based care coordination plan designed to remove barriers to good health.
So it's a pathway. That's Cybernetics, and it's a standardized plan. They're going to be offering a menu. And then in order for them to run their Pay for Success deals, they're going to need you on as many pathways as possible. So even say if you do have one issue that you need taken care of, they'll probably identify multiple issues because the more issues they can involve you in, the more money they can stand to make on the Pay for Success finance deals.
Pathway is tied to specific outcomes, and Kathy will provide support, accountability, and
accountability. That's the data and the blockchain health twins and education twins. And you can see here, number 3 is behavioral health. So the pathways include housing, employment, behavioral health, and medical compliance. This is all compliance. This is exactly pretty much the Unicomp plan.
An encouragement to Sarah and Amy to see those outcomes are met and each pathway completed.
It's a game. Completing the pathway is a game.
Kathy learns Sarah has been missing school because of her severe asthma, which has sent her to the ER multiple times. She assigns a medical home pathway to find a regular primary care provider for Sarah and a medication management pathway to.
So the medication management pathway, again, with Internet of Things, they can start to track compliance with your medication, right? They can. And that's not to say that medication compliance maybe isn't an issue with some people, but it also, like I said before, if your local HMO installs a psychedelic pharmaceutical printer in your kitchen and then it's attached to the lock on your front door and you can't go outside until you've complied with whatever download comes through the pharmaceutical, whether it be regular pharmaceuticals or psychedelic pharmaceuticals printing, that's what the Internet of Everything, the Web3 blockchain smart contracts are. That's a problem. That is really scary, that level of control. And that really is kind of straight out of the, my grandpa needs an extra treatment, chip because he's acting a little odd kind of scenario. So think about that.
To verify Sarah is taking her asthma medication as prescribed. Kathy assigns Amy an education pathway to present some information about her tobacco smoking, which might be affecting her daughter's asthma. They talk
Might be. They don't really actually know.
About available support to help her quit And Kathy assigns a smoking cessation pathway. Kathy will make regular home visits to check in on Sarah and Amy's progress and can help schedule appointments and arrange transportation.
Now, I will point out that nicotine seems to be very significant in terms of, I'm still sort of parsing out the role of nicotine, but nicotine, these acetylcholine receptors for nicotine actually help improve learning and memory integration through REM sleep. And so I can see a lot of the focus on smoking cessation is actually still administering nicotine, but in a different form, right? You're not smoking it, but you're vaping it, or you've got a nicotine patch. And so that's going to be able to be regulated. And then again, that is something that's affecting your body and your consciousness. And if they can get everybody with these Internet of Things wearables, like parsing the information, like, maybe she's going to need a CPAP, right? Or a sleep monitoring device too. They can get all of that data and start really managing your biology for optimization of the computer.
For every pathway Kathy's clients complete, such as when Sarah attends her primary care appointment or when Amy quits smoking, Kathy or her organization will receive an incentive payment rewarding her for those outcomes.
Gross. This is gamification. This is gamification, and it's all going to be enabled by Web3. By blockchain, by all the things that Bobby is promoting. So I need you to look at this video and understand the Health and Human Services is being structured to do this very thing. And this is not to actually improve people's lives. It's to build data lakes and run this global computing.
In addition to her pathways, Kathy will access the Hub's up-to-date resource portal to find community connections that will support her patient's health. Because Kathy tracks.
Now, those community connections are the nonprofits that will be doing the services that are going to be also linked into the Pay for Success network.
Every step of this process in the Pathfinder Care Management.
So they've literally trapped Kathy in the iPad, her digital twin, and they're drawing her as a digital twin into the portal of the iPad. I mean, this is like highly symbolic if you stop to think about it.
System. All of Sarah and Amy
are turned into data. They're they're put on a leaderboard and they're turned into pie charts and bar graphs.
Providers can access and share real-time data on their clients. This data helps Better Health Together manage quality, identify gaps in service, and increase the likelihood of success for our community. The Pathfinder Community Hub gets the whole region working together for better health.
So this Better Health Together that's sponsoring the video is in the Spokane area of Washington State. But I believe that they're also in California. And in Washington State, it's connected to Gonzaga University. And a lot of these app-driven, data-driven health policy situations are integrated into the Catholic hospital systems. Not just the Catholic hospital systems, but they're very powerful. And again, we know that the Vatican is part of the impact finance space, and that Cura Foundation, with the biodigital convergence stuff and the just economy stuff that they're working on is all going to be layered in because, again, health is one of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So, it's useful to go back and see this Meet Kathy video that I've been putting out for like 3 years, and that is what this IBM contract was this very type of thing. And so when I'm looking at these two programs of both Dewan in Santa Clara County, very high profile individual, and lots of press attention given. And not that I'm saying it's okay that there were accounting irregularities with Head Start Finance or that there were contracting irregularities with insider information in this Harris County. But to me, it does seem very clear that it's a problem reaction manufactured solution. And if you think back even to the first Trump presidency and all of the, we're going to drain the swamp, that narrative. And of course, the swamp was not drained, right? The swamp was not drained. And so now we have round two. But who's the sidekick now in round two? Well, that would be Bobby Camelot, right? And he's the legacy of the men, those good Kennedy boys who are all trying to do good for the world, but they were up against the deep state, right? They were up against the bad government. It was good boys against a bad system, right? And so he's the heir. He's carrying their mantle, right? And what has Bobby said he wants to do? along with the backing of Nicole Shanahan, is that they want to blockchain government.
Presidential candidate RFK Jr. announced at a rally on Sunday that he wants to put the entire U.S. budget on blockchain. He says the move would allow any American to look at every budget item anytime. RFK argues it would allow more transparency and accountability in how Washington spends taxpayer money. The blockchain is a digital ledger of transactions used by cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. RFK Jr. has embraced digital assets throughout his campaign by accepting campaign donations in cryptocurrency. He's even pitched plans to back the U.S. dollar with Bitcoin.
They want to put government on blockchain, what? For accountability and transparency. And so they'll use stories like this one with Barbie Robinson in Harris County and the woman Marianne DeWan in the Santa Clara County Office of Education to legitimize the pivot away from humans overseeing government contracting to having them being automated on the blockchain through AI, essentially to get them out of the hands of crooked people. We'll put it onto the blockchain and make it super accountable. And that accountability then will feed into the evidence-based public policy solutions, including evidence-based medicine and value-based healthcare. And that healthcare is not just of your body, but also the mental health space, which is increasingly segueing into telemedicine and wearables and app-based therapeutics and electroceuticals and all of these things that are going to be linked to your digital identity, which will have us being agents in their game, in this game, in the name of fixing things. So I'm going to, I would just say be mindful of this. And the other thing is the Sonoma County, which is where this woman Barbie Robinson came from in California before she landed in Houston. The northern boundary of Sonoma County is about 37 miles from Ukiah, California. And I don't know if any of you guys are familiar, if that rings any bells, but essentially, Ukiah, just north of Ukiah, is where Jim Jones set up his sort of supporting housing cult, right? And I was really shocked when I was doing research into some of the housing issues, and I've talked about the issue of supportive housing before with respect to Sherry Hunkala and this Elwin and the evidence-based supportive housing systems and housing first and where that's going to go with the outside in robot. And you dial it back because we think these things are all emergent, but they've really been bubbling for a very long time. And when I was doing that research, I found out that Jim Jones was on the Housing Authority Council for Oakland back in the day. Right? And he was very deeply integrated into Democratic politics in California. So if you start to think about supportive housing run by your crazy cult leader, but maybe not even crazy, maybe this is just like some sort of larger human ecology, funded MK Ultra experiment, it starts to get really creepy with these digital twins and having the world run by computers. And this is what's happening to Texas, which is ironic because all of it is they're so big into their archetype of like freedom and no individuality and don't boss us around. But literally, they're the blockchain state that in the name of freedom and free markets is rolling out the protocol layer that's going to be the fitness landscape to optimize all of these metrics, which is totally the antithesis of what you would think Texas actually was about. So I'm going to stick on to this, the 7-minute site visit that Jason and I did to the IBM office in Austin. And it's a little dated. I do mention technocracy at the time. Again, I've sort of moved on from technocracy, but I do touch on the role of IBM, which is who got this contract in Houston in the public health systems of, biometric passporting during the lockdowns, and then also their role in governance, data-driven governance systems, which is, again, what Bloomberg is doing, what Arnold Ventures is doing, what Johns Hopkins is doing, what Stanford is doing, what they're all doing in terms of data-driven government visualizations. Again, automating all of this because, you can't trust people, right? If you're going to, empty the swamp, you need blockchain to do it. And who better to be the poster boy behind the blockchain shift? That would be Bobby, right? I'm fighting the deep state, Bobby, on behalf of my family, the Kennedy family. We're going to clean out the swamp and fight the deep state with blockchain. And it's kind of actually a perfect setup because so many people are going to buy it, right? But I would say I don't want to live in a world run by a protocol layer and token engineering and gamification. I don't want that. So I'm going to drop in that 7 minutes. And again, understanding that there's the digital health twin for these evidence-based pay-for-success services in the healthcare space, but the flip side is the education digital twin, which is the Marianne Dewan, Marcy Lauk, Data Zone, data-driven education space. So they're managing both your physiology and your cognition and your psyche. And I think, again, when I talk about the psychic and computer, in this thought experiment, it's the idea that it's a two-phase process. There's a disembodiment in terms of an altered state, whether that's substance-enabled or mindfulness-enabled or contemplative prayer-enabled. So there's an out-of-body gathering of information, and then there's pulling it back in and processing it through the biology, including the microbiome. And again, once you have people in supported integrated health, you're managing their nutrition, right? You're managing their nutrition, and you're managing their school lunches. You're managing all the things for the optimization of this networked biohybrid supercomputer. So I'm going to drop in the IBM site visit, and then I'm going to read a little bit from this book called The Perfect Day, Rosemary's Baby, by Ira Levin, who previously wrote Rosemary's Baby. Sorry about that. And it was published in 1970. So, and essentially it's about the world run by Unicomp, which is a giant computer, which would totally be like IBM, right?
All right, so we've gone about a 5-minute drive north of the JJ Pickle Research Lab, and we are at sort of a corporate campus here for IBM. And we're here because IBM is a crucial player in the space of digital identity, increasingly tied to health passporting systems. They were the platform that was being used in the Excelsior Pass, which is the vaccine passport initiative that is underway in the city of New York with Governor Cuomo. And it's important to understand the trajectory of IBM in sort of cybernetic social management. And many people know it goes back to the Hollerith cards tied to the Holocaust, but what a lot of people are not as familiar with is the fact that IBM technology underpinned the pass system that was linked to apartheid South Africa, which I think in many respects is actually more relevant in current conditions of geofencing. So biosecurity state geofencing linked to software platforms. Just a bit of background about IBM in Austin. Austin was very intentionally developed as a technology center starting in the late 1950s. There are a number of influential individuals that got together in 1957 to cultivate technology companies to bring them specifically to Austin. And so today, there are many major employers that are technology-based. IBM is the third largest technology employer after Dell and Samsung. And so they're a major force in the city. They initially started their first big factory here in 1967, and it was to manufacture Selectric typewriters. And then from then on into the 80s, they started to do microchip processing and personal computing, and then have moved since into these larger sort of systems data analysis sets. Now, the other piece that is important to understand about IBM, it is very central to the push for electronic government and efficiency around health and human service delivery, social welfare delivery, educational technology data systems. And I remember coming across the use of AI in all of these spaces, often to very negative effects, where algorithms were put in place that would flag people within the social welfare system as non-compliant, which was not the case. Same with AI in healthcare records. The results were pretty terrible, actually. And so, but even so, because data is the new asset class, data is the new oil, things are proceeding apace, especially with the global biosurveillance society setting in. Relating to the educational database centers that were down in the Pickle Research Lab with the Supercomputing Center, it's important to know that IBM actually partnered with Sesame Workshop to create tablet-based educational delivery systems that were then piloted on Syrian refugee communities with support of the MacArthur Foundation. It was part of their 100 and change grant with the International Rescue Commission. And so they got together with the Nudge Unit, the Behavioral Institute unit of the UK, and they were trying to place these digital learning tablets visits into homes of dispossessed refugees from Syria and get those children online for their educational tracking. And then a lot of it was also about tracking their families in connection with the children's educational delivery. So there were a lot of concerns about that. And so most people are not, like, they would think, well, what does like a pilot program in with refugee populations in Jordan have anything to do with Austin, Texas? Well, IBM has incredible tentacles, and then once they get everyone on the blockchain tied into these medical passporting systems, they can start to layer in programmable benefits that include education, food assistance, housing assistance, and many other things that are tied to behavioral compliance. And so if we back this out into knowing the history of this company, both with not only the Holocaust, but the apartheid systems, that we can see how a technocratic approach to government, while they may be pitched as accountable and transparent, is also very incredibly dehumanizing and very much in line with patterns of domination. And I will say, ironically, we've chosen this location on the campus to do this filming because there's a giant construction project across the way that is, we're seeing around us Amazon services, Charles Schwab, which is investing, New York Life, which is insurance. So these are all related to making bets on people's lives and managing them as data. But the name of the corporate development is actually Domain, right? So we have the Domain, but yes, multiple units that are, it's a regionally developed corporate campus called The Domain. So we've got domination across from, in partnership with IBM potentially. And that's that's sort of the landscape of this space. And so that just lays out, the one last thing I did want to say is that in Austin, at the onset of the COVID pandemic being announced, that they were working very closely with the city government to develop chatbots that would facilitate information sharing with the Austin population. So the city itself, in addition to being one of these very smart cities that is involved in a lot of what works data management, that IBM was doing test cases with these chatbots in terms of government facilitation. So increasingly, you're going to have not direct access to your government services, actual individual people, and you will be mediated through these layers of technology that are corporatism. And in my sense, that if we are not very careful, handing over electronic government to these corporations so that we may have a fiction that we have people elected and accountable, but really it's being run by algorithms, is really, really troubling as we increasingly start to live in a planetary computer.
Yeah, international / noosphere, noetic computer. And actually, Michael Caine, I will give Michael Caine credit, of Children's Health Defense, mentioned this to me early on in the lockdowns, and it was pretty spot on. And I will say it's essentially about people who are all part of a One World Peace program, and they get monthly therapies to keep them in the program. And then some of them disconnect from their therapy secretly, and then they start to wake up, right? But when they wake up and try to escape, they get on a boat and go to another island with other people, and they think that they're free, but actually it's just another version of the game. So the people, the Unicomp that's running the world puts the boats on the beach because they know certain people will escape, and then they provide an island to contain them all there and keep an eye on them. And then that's what I realized, like, that's what the resistance is. It's they put a boat there, and then you cross over and you think, I've woken up, but really you're just in another layer of dreaming. So I'm gonna read one chapter from this Ira Levin book. And I will mention I talked to Joseph and Gonzalez, and he actually read this as a young person. It had a great influence on him. So it's interesting that we have this book in common. So this is chapter 2, and the main character is Chip. Okay, so chapter 2. Chip's grandfather was the only one who had given him the name Chip. He had given all of them extra names that were different from their real ones. Chip's mother, who was his daughter, he called Suzu instead of Anna. Chip's father was Mike, not Jesus, and he thought the idea foolish. And Peace was Willow, which he refused to have anything at all to do with. No, don't call me that. I'm Peace. I'm Peace KD37T5002! Exclamation point. Papa Jan was odd looking, naturally. All grandparents had their marked peculiarities. A few centimeters too much or too little of height, skin that was too light or too dark, big ears, a bent nose. Papa John Papa Jan, was both taller and darker than normal. His eyes were big and bulging, and there were 2 reddish patches in his graying hair. But he wasn't always only odd looking, he was odd talking. That was the real oddness about him. He was always saying things vigorously and with enthusiasm, and yet giving Chip the feeling that he didn't mean them at all, that he meant, in fact, exact opposites. On the subject of names, for instance, "Marvelous! Wonderful," he said. 4 names for boys, 4 names for girls. What could be more friction-free, more everyone the same? Everybody would name the boys after Christ, Marx, Wood, or Way anyway, wouldn't they? "Yes," Chip said. "Of course," Papa John said. "And if Uni, that's the world computer, gives out 4 names for boys, it has to give out 4 names for girls too, right? Obviously. Listen." And he stopped Chip and, crouching down, spoke face to face with him, his bulging eyes dancing as if he were about to laugh. It was a holiday, and they were on their way to the parade, Unification Day, or Way's birthday, or whatever. Chip was 7. "Listen, Lee, RM35, M26J449988WXYZ, Papa John said. I'm going to say John, just that's easier. "Listen, I'm going to tell you something fantastic, incredible. In my day," are you listening? "In my day, there were over 20 different names for boys alone. Would you believe it? Love of family, it's the truth. There was John, and Jan, and Amu, and Lev, Higa, and Mike, Tonio, and in my father's time, there were even more, maybe 40 or 50. Isn't that ridiculous? All those different names when members themselves are exactly the same and interchangeable. Isn't that the silliest thing you ever heard of?" And Chip nodded, confused, feeling that Papa John meant the opposite, that somehow it wasn't silly and ridiculous to have 40 or 50 names for boys alone. "Look at them," Papa John said, taking Chip's hand and walking on with him through Unity Park to the Way birthday parade. "Exactly the same, isn't it marvelous? Hair the same, eyes the same, skin the same, shape the same, boys and girls all the same, like peas in a pod. Isn't it fine? Isn't it top speed?" Chip, flushing, not his green eye, not the same as anybody's. What does peas in a pod mean? Now, I'm just going to point out the green eye thing. That's the heterochromia. And so, Emily, if you're listening, pay attention to this. This book has a heterochromia hero in it. Chip, so what does peas in a pod mean? "I don't know," Papa John said. "Things members used to eat before total cakes. Sharia used to say it." He was a construction supervisor in EUR 55131. 20 kilometers from 55128, where Chip and his family lived. On Sundays and holidays, he rode over and visited them. His wife, Sharia, had drowned in a sightseeing boat disaster in 135, the same year Chip was born, and he hadn't remarried. Chip's other grandparents, his father's mother and father, lived in MEX 10405, and the only time he saw them was when they phoned on birthdays. They were odd, but not nearly as odd as Papa John. School was pleasant and play was pleasant. The pre-U museum was pleasant, although some of the exhibits were a bit scary. The spears and guns, for instance, and the prison cell, and the striped-suited convict sitting on the cot and clutching his head in motionless month after month woe. Chip always looked at him. He would slip away from the rest of the class if he had to, and having looked, he always walked quickly away. Ice cream and toys and comics books were pleasant too. And once when Chip put his bracelet and a toy sticker to the supply center scanner, its indicator red-winked no, and he had to put the toy, a construction set, in the turn-back bin. He couldn't understand why Uni had refused him. It was the right day, and the toy was in the right category. "There must be a reason, dear," the member behind him said. "You go call your advisor and find out." And he did, and it turned out that the toy was only being withheld for a few days, and not denied completely. He had been teasing a scanner somewhere, putting his bracelet to it again and again, and he was being taught not to. That winking red no was the first in his life for a claim that mattered to him, not just for starting into the wrong classroom or coming to the Meta Center on the wrong day. It hurt him and saddened him. Birthdays were pleasant, and Christmas and Marxmas and Unification Day and Wood's and Way's birthdays, even more pleasant because they came less frequently, were his link days, And the new link would be shinier than the others, and they would stay shiny for days and days and days. And then one day he would remember and look, and there would be only old links, all of them the same, indistinguishable, like peas in a pod. And so it's interesting here, right? Because he's got a bracelet, like an ID bracelet, that has a smart contract attached, right? If you want to, there's a day that you can claim a toy, but there's certain categories and there's certain rules. But then there can be rule overlays too. So if you think about Unicomp and possibly IBM running the world as a protocol layer, that's exactly what it looks like. And it's automated, right? So people aren't running it. It's the Unicomp. Everything is outsourced to the computer to run it because people can be odd, right? People can be odd. Okay, back to the story. In the spring of 145, when Chip was 10, he and his parents and Peace, again, Peace, the one world superorganism, were granted the trip to EUR 00001 to see Unicomp. It was over an hour's ride from carport to carport, and the longest trip Chip remembered making. Although according to his parents, he had flown from Mex to EUR when he was 1.5, and from EUR 20140 to 55128 a few months later. They made the Unicomp trip on a Sunday in April, riding with a couple in their 50s, someone's odd-looking grandparents, both of them lighter than normal, she with her hair unevenly chopped, and another family, the boy and girl of which were a year older than Chip and Peace. The other father drove the car from the EUR 0001 turnoff to the carport near Unicomp. Chip watched with interest as the man worked the car's lever and buttons. It felt funny to be riding slowly on wheels again after shooting along on the air. They took snapshots outside of Unicomp's white marble dome, whiter and more beautiful than it was in pictures or on TV, as the snow-tipped mountains beyond it were more stately, the lake of universal brotherhood more blue and far-reaching, and then they joined the line at the entrance, touched the admission scanner, and went into the blue-white curving lobby. A smiling member in pale blue showed them toward the elevator line. They joined it, and Papa John came up, grinning with delight and their astonishment. "What are you doing here?" Chip's father asked as Papa John kissed Chip's mother. They had told him they had granted the trip, and he had said nothing at all about claiming it himself. Papa John kissed Chip's father. "Oh, I just decided to surprise you, that's all. I wanted to tell my friend here." He laid a large hand across Chip's shoulder, a little more about Uni than the earpiece will. "Hello, Chip." He bent and kissed Chip's cheek, and Chip, surprised to be the reason for Papa John's being there, kissed him in return and said, "Hello, Papa John." "Hello, Peace, Katie 37T5002, Papa John said gravely and kissed Peace, and she kissed him and said hello. "Well, when did you claim the trip?" Chip's father asked. "Oh, a few days after you did," Papa John said, keeping his hand on Chip's shoulder. The line moved up a few meters, and they all moved with it. Chip's mother said, "But you were here only 5 or 6 years ago, weren't you?" "Well, Uni knows who to put it together." Uni knows who put it together, Papa John said, smiling. "We get special favors." "Well, here I am." "That's not so," Chip's father said. "No one gets special favors." And again, think of that in the context of these contract arrangements, right? No one gets special favors with Unicomp in charge. "Well, here I am anyway," Papa John said, and turned his smile down towards Chip. "Right?" "Right," Chip said, and smiled back at him. Papa John had helped build Unicomp when he was a young man. It had been his first assignment. The elevator held about 30 members, and instead of music, it had a man's voice. "Good day, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the site of Unicomp." A warm, friendly voice that Chip recognized from the TV. "As you can tell, we've started to move," it said, "and now we are descending at a speed of 22 meters per second. It will take us over 3.5 minutes to reach Uni's 5-kilometer depths. This shaft down which we are traveling," and the voice gave statistics about the size of Unicomp's housing and the thickness of its walls and told of its safety from all natural and man-made disturbance. Sounds a little like Cheyenne Mountain, right? Chip had heard this information before in school and on TV, but hearing it now while entering that housing and passing through the walls while on the very verge of seeing Unicomp made it seem new and exciting. He listened attentively, watching the speaker disc over the elevator door. Papa John's hand still held his shoulder as if to restrain him. "We're slowing now," the voice said. "Enjoy your visit, won't you?" And the elevator sank to a cushiony stop, and the door divided and slid to both sides. There was another lobby, smaller than the one at ground level, another smiling member in pale blue, and another line, this one extending 2 by 2 to double doors that opened in a dimly lit hallway. "Here we are," Chip called, and Papa John said to him, "We don't all have to be together." They had become separated from Chip's parents and Peace, who were farther ahead in line and looking back at them questioningly. He's angling, right? Chip's parents' Peace was too short to be seen. The member in front of Chip turned and offered to let them move up, but Papa John said, "No, this is all right, thank you, brother." And he waved a hand at Chip's parents and smiled, and Chip did the same, and Chip's parents smiled back and then turned around and moved forward. Papa John looked about, his bulging eyes bright, his mouth keeping its smile, his nostrils flared and filled with his breathing. "So, you're finally getting to see Unicomp. Excited?" "Yes, very," Chip said. They followed the line forward. "I don't blame you," Papa John said. "Wonderful, once-in-a-lifetime experience to see the machine that's going to classify you and give you your assignments, and that's going to decide where you'll live and whether or not you'll marry the girl you want to marry, and if you'll do, whether or not you'll have children, and what they'll be named, and if you have them, of course you're excited. Who wouldn't be? Of course you're excited. Who wouldn't be?" And Chip looked up at Papa John, disturbed. And Papa John, still smiling, clapped him on the back as they passed their turn in the hallway. "Go, look at the displays, look at Uni, look at everything. It's all here for you. Look at it." And there was a rack of earpieces, the same as in the museum, and Chip took one and put it in, and Papa John's strange manner made him nervous, and he was sorry not to be up ahead with his parents in Peace. And Papa John put in an earpiece too. "I wonder what interesting new facts I'm going to hear," he said, and laughed to himself, and Chip turned away from him. His nervousness and feeling of disturbance fell away as he faced a wall that glittered and skittered with 1,000 sparkling mini lights, and the voice of the elevator spoke in his ear.